Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Mayor, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
We're here to talk about immigration, an issue that is fraught in many countries and controversial. Let me start by asking you, what is it in your view that makes a city a welcoming city for immigrants? What does it take?
A message from the top that tells folks that you welcome talent and merit, because fear is a very powerful component in dealing with immigration challenges, and to the extent that you can do what you can in a decisive fashion to eliminate fear, you can start having a real sense of the good parts and the more challenging parts of immigration.
Mayor Coderre.
Well, Canada is a land of immigrants. Montreal by itself has, different communities. This is diversity by itself. So it's important during that time that it can be an add value, but we need to keep the communication open and share the value. So we have what we call the multicultural approach. You can be equal and different at the same time. And because of that, I think that it's a very good step. We have to be vigilant, but it's a good step to bring people together. So we're making the first step, they're making the other one, and we're all working together.
You know, in the U.S., we kind of have a bi-level debate going on. On the one hand, we've had stalemate at the national level for a long time. I mean, 2006, under President Bush, the Senate passes a bipartisan bill. House doesn't take it up. 2013, 7 years later, under President Obama, basically the same vote in the Senate, passes the bill again. House doesn't take it up. So we're stalemated at the national level. On the other hand, I've been struck by how many cities have consciously turned to recruiting immigrants as a way of trying to rebuild their populations and their economy. Cities all over the country, Midwestern cities, Pittsburgh and Dayton and St. Louis. And so is there how do you kind of sort this out where we have this national stalemate, but there seems to be a solidifying consensus in cities about the value of immigrants and immigration?
Well, Ron, I think that there's no question that cities are where hope meets the street. We don't have the luxury of having the prolonged debate that they're having at the national level, because they're real people moving around cities and contributing to our communities and our economies in a powerful way. Between the year 2000 and 2012, more than 22% of the new residents in my city were foreign born. So you can't have a 22% addition to your population that you're not engaging in trying to deal with in a substantive way. And we just don't have the luxury, as you know, that they have at the federal level. So what we have decided with the help of Bloomberg and the Rockefeller Foundation was that we were going to become a welcoming city. We stood up a panel of 20 of the most talented people in the city on the subject, and they have put forth 20 recommendations that we're going to implement and execute on. And then at every opportunity I have as mayor, my job really is to send a different message. When you hear progressive thinking people on immigration, it's one thing for New York to do it, or San Francisco to do it, or Chicago to do it. I'm in Atlanta, and I'm in Georgia. And so I think it's important that you have exemplars and examples in the harder part of the country, because this problem and this challenge and this opportunity has got to be taken on all across America.
And we'll come back to that, because certainly diversity is diffusing across America, and many places that had not previously experienced it are. But in Canada, 22% of the overall population is foreign-born, which is significantly higher.
And it depends on the cities. I'm a former Minister of Immigration after 9/11 in Canada, and of course, I spoke about the multicultural approach. You have, the refugees is one thing. We help, human nature to come and help them. But on immigration, you can do that for economic reason. It's a matter of the demography, of course. Just in Toronto, 60% of the people were not born in Canada. In Montreal, it's 30%. So this is the global village. And if we want to, we can we can focus on economy, because at one point when I was there, we were missing something like 1 million skilled workers, and you can outsource. So that's a good reason to solidify communities. On the other hand, we are a city of knowledge. We have 5 universities, so of course we have the foreign student who are coming to us. So this is great ambassador for the future. So it's a bridge builder. It's not, it's about act local but think global. It has a major impact for the overall, for any other public policy for the rest of the world, because we're connecting not only among ourselves, it's good for us at the same time, but at the same time it's also helpful to to build this planet.
You mentioned you were Minister of Immigration at the federal level.
At Canada, yeah.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about the same question I asked Mayor Reed. How does the debate look differently at the federal level versus the local level, and how is responsibility apportioned for dealing with immigration?
Well, of course, we don't have the same kind of debate between Canada and the United States. In the United States, we're talking more about the melting pot. In Canada, it's the multicultural approach. In Europe, it's not immigration, it's illegal migration. And the reason why, maybe at several levels, it's kind of the same because it's based on the policy of citizenship. 85% of all the newcomers will become citizen. Now, saying that, there is some major local issue regarding integration. We have to work together, but we are the government of proximity. So, of course, when they come to Montreal or some other region, they don't integrate like this. So you still have, we were talking about aging problem, but immigration is also an issue for social housing. Jobs, to the recognition of their credential is an issue by itself, because sometimes they can come as a doctor. We have a bad joke saying that when I will feel sick, I will take a cab because it's a foreign doctor who's not recognized, so I can be saved. So all that is part of the challenges that we have as mayor, but clearly it's an ongoing issue.
I want to ask you about, come back to that, about the issues of backlash and acceptance. Let's start with you, Mayor, because you said, as you pointed out, Georgia is a tough part of the country on this issue. There have been a number of southern states that have seen significant increases, particularly in their Hispanic population, and have responded with very tough legislation on enforcement about aimed at the undocumented or people here illegally. Talk a little bit about how you see the dynamic in Georgia. How does the attitude in Atlanta compare to the attitude more broadly in the state?
The attitude in the 10-county metro region is more forward-leaning, and it's based upon facts. So right now in Atlanta, what we're doing is fact-based leadership. One of the reasons that I stood up our working group was because the state's tone, not just in Georgia, but in the South, because we are largely dominated by Republican leadership that has a different position than we do, has been aggressive, and there needed to be a counter message. So it wasn't okay for me to have the kind of messages that were being put forth on immigration, when I think that if you're a fact-based leader, all of the facts regarding foreign-born populations are favorable, and the metropolitan Atlanta area has the second fastest growing foreign-born population on the eastern seaboard, second to Baltimore. So tough rhetoric and tough language isn't going to do anything about the facts. And as the mayor, I've got to deal with what the facts are. And the facts are these individuals start a number of businesses at a disproportionate rate. They have advanced degrees at a disproportionate rate, and on and on and on. So if you go to the hard data, Ron, if you're a fact-based leader, you've got to be in this game.
In fact, the data is that immigrants are in Atlanta, 13% of the population, 16% of the labor force, 14% of the population, 18% of the labor force, 21% of the small business owners.
Yes.
So can I ask you, before bringing the mayor, the backlash, is it more intense out of the metro areas? Is that where it's coming from primarily?
Yes, but that's typical. I mean, we're in a classic situation, rural versus urban. But I think that we're on the right side of the argument. But for too long, folks like the people at CityLab were quiet. So we quietly knew that we were right based upon the data, but we weren't having a big public conversation or pushing back in a public way. And I think it's very important that these blue havens in conservative areas do absolutely that. I was at the Tribune Festival in Austin, Texas, a week before last, and that's the kind of conversation that we were having. You'll have really smart people who get in a room, they know what the facts are, but we're not challenging these negative messages that come from the more conservative environment.
You've had your own divisions. I mean, the party that your party defeated earlier this year, the Parti Québécois, if I'm pronouncing it, proposed a whole series of very restrictive measures on immigration and language. You did defeat them in the election.
And it backlashed big time.
And a backlash. Who were they appealing to? What is the audience for that backlash message in Montreal?
You see, the issue is, okay, we have to be vigilant no matter what. I think we have to be factual. Since 9/11, there was a lot of stereotype. A Muslim is not a terrorist. It's a matter of individual. It's not a matter of race, nation, or religion. So we have to be very careful. It's tolerance zero when people try to play the system. But besides that, I think we have to be open on that. Clearly, you always have, because it's a global village now, that some people feel that they might lose their identity. So we have to be, it's a matter of unknown. Maybe they fear the unknown, and it's important to keep the communication channel open. And clearly, that's part of the integration. Integration is not a newcomer who's coming to Canada or Montreal, for example. It's also the Montrealers who receive them. And if you notice, in the beginning of the 20th century, when the Italians, for example, came, there was some stereotype for the Italians. Portuguese, same thing. What we need to be careful, though, is to fight against Islamophobic and anti-Semitism. By putting the resource and the open channel at every level, I think we can be successful. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of how can they be happy. It's a matter of housing. It's a matter of quality of life. And we don't define them just by which part of the country they're coming. They are becoming citizen, and we have to help them and be sensitive to their needs.
Language can be another flashpoint, and certainly has been in Montreal and Canada. Here in California, they banned bilingual education in the late 1990s. The mayor last night, Mayor Garcetti, I was interviewing, said that should be repealed, that we should allow that. I'm just interested, in Montreal, this has been an issue as well. Talk about how you handle the use of language in the schools and elsewhere.
Montreal is a francophone metropolis, but we have a very big communities. Of course, we're surrounded by American culture, Anglophone and all that. So there is always that fight for survival in a way, but you don't survive through legislation. With your heart, it's with your love of your own language and your roots. It's always an ongoing fight. You will have some people who are saying, and that's why we need to protect that language, that French label. But at the same time, the beauty of Montreal, which is a very diverse city where you have all those, it's Leonard Cohen and we have Celine Dion. So both of them, I can see that do it. That would be great. So, but it's always an ongoing fight for survival, and I can understand that. But better talk to each other again and provide, through culture, through the communication with the use of the technology, it's pretty helpful, but it starts with your heart.
By the way, here in LA, we will not apologize for one cultural incursion, which is taking the Stanley Cup to the beach. We're not sorry about that.
Yeah, but we had 24.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right.
We share. See?
This century. Talk a little bit about, one of the interesting things about Atlanta, like a number of cities, Richmond, Charlotte, former mayor of Charlotte was just here, Baltimore, a city that historically had been defined by a binary political, economic, social engagement between African Americans and whites. And now suddenly, you're in Atlanta, you have the share of your population that's African American is going down, and you have a rising third force of an Hispanic population, as well as others, but in particular, Hispanic population. So is it only kind of rural whites who are uneasy about what's happening to change the dynamics of the state, or is there also issues in integrating this new population with an existing African American population?
I think that's less of a challenge for Atlanta. I think that because we are the home of Dr. Martin Luther King and so many progressive leaders in the civil rights community, but also in the business community. The reason that Atlanta was able to survive so many of the issues around the civil rights movement was because we had business leaders like Robert Woodruff, who was the leader of the Coca-Cola Company, who insisted that Dr. Martin Luther King be recognized. So I think that is a part of our cultural DNA. So I don't get very much resistance within the city of Atlanta about what we're doing at all. I think that it is a source of pride. Mayor Ivan Allen, who actually had my job, was the first Southern elected official to testify in favor of the Civil Rights Act, and he ended his political career as a result. So we have a history of trying to navigate these tough issues, and I think most people in our city view this as very exciting.
Interesting. So what would you, let me stick with Mayor Reed for a second. What do you want to see from President Obama on immigration, assuming that Congress remains stalemated? Should he act through executive action, and what would you like to see him do?
I think that he should do both at the same time. I think that he should act on through executive action, and then I think following the midterm results, no matter what they are, just don't stop and just don't give up. We have to break through on this issue. And maybe, and I hope that the moment will be right after the midterms, no matter what the results are, because I believe that our Republican friends will be more concerned about 16. Mm-hmm. And after the results of the midterm, I believe that there may be a moment, not because of President Obama, but because everybody's attention is going to turn towards 2016. And I think that Republicans are smart enough to understand that a pivot is essential.
Mayor Coderre, you said something before that was kind of striking to me, and I probably, if it's the mayor too, you're part of the Cities for Citizenship.
Yes.
Which is a challenge here. How many people who are eligible to become citizens don't? You said 85% of immigrants in Canada become citizens. Wow. How does that happen? Is it an easier process, or is there more of a culture of doing that?
No, because it's part of our DNA that when we welcome somebody, we don't welcome an immigrant, we welcome a future citizen. And that's the reason why when you look at the policies like in the state, we have the same regarding refugees though, but regarding immigration, the one in Europe is different, but it's part of our culture, it's part of our way. You know, when we talk about the Charter of Freedom and Rights, it's exactly the same thing. And it's an add value. The reason why Montreal is so great, this is a francophone metropolis, but also it's very diverse. I mean, you can speak multi-language. We have about 120 different communities speak 200 languages. But that add value also is good for business, and it's good for culture, creativity, and innovation. And we have a lot of people who are coming to Montreal because of that diversity. And Montreal is like a little Canada. So you will live exactly the same thing in several areas. So for me, the immigration policy is clearly an add value that help to integrate and help also to bring people together. You don't define the world by countries or by continent anymore. You will define them by cities. And because we are having all those challenges, social challenges of integration, jobs, housing, and all that, it's important that at the same time that we are sensitive to the other. Of course, we generous but not naive. But at the same time, clearly, if you build that kind of process, it will be helpful and it will be positive.
You know, Mayor Reed, one thing I've been wondering as I've been listening and participating in conversations the last 2 days, this feeling that in many ways these cities, regardless of what country they're in, are dealing with a more common set of dynamics and challenges in many ways than communities 100 miles away from them in a less urbanized setting. I mean, in some ways,
but at the same time,
it's more similar across.
We have universal issues, sustainable development, but we have to keep that identity and sensitivity that we have.
To the local.
To the local. It's act local, think global. But if everybody stick together, I mean, when Atlanta and Montreal are working together, we are stronger for green economy, for example. So, and when you have those kind of policy for immigration, you learn from the others. So we then, you know, the rest of the world is in Montreal. Since we've been living in 50 years old ago, Expo 67, we open ourselves to the world. And that's the reason why there's a lot of people who are coming. Montreal is Europe in the Americas, for example. So the people who are coming, that's the kind of add value afterwards, where we can all stick together and make a difference to the sake of our planet.
Talk about who's coming. Bill Fry is a great demographer at the Brookings Institution,
yes.
Has a book coming out, Diversity Explosion, and he points out that in places like Atlanta, and he cites Atlanta as a specific example, that are becoming the new destinations for Hispanic immigrants, in many cases they are coming with less skill than in the established kind of entry ports. I'm just wondering, and are often a single man alone, kind of, you know, maybe coming to do construction or work like that. Does that create some kind of, what kind of challenges does that create in terms of creating pathways to opportunity, integration, assimilation, connection?
It can be tougher, but we can't use that as an excuse. We have 57 colleges and universities in Atlanta. So there's no excuse to have parts of your population that can't get the training that they need. The exciting part of all of this, certainly as it relates to issues that concern cities, is speed to scale. Mayors have no problem taking something whole from another city and implementing it and giving the person credit one time, and then you don't have to give them credit anymore. And so that's the real opportunity with CityLab. The real opportunity with CityLab is we know our country's GDP, 70% plus is in cities. We know our population centers, 70% plus are in America's metros. So, you know, I tell folks all of the time, everywhere I go, that if you don't want to spend your whole life trying to change the world, come and work in cities. And that is happening not just in the United States with the frustration with national governments, but it's happening globally. So I think the bottom line is we can't make excuses. And what we're trying to do in Atlanta is to set the pace in the South. We're not trying to be New York or Chicago or San Francisco or Los Angeles because our political dynamics are vastly different. But the country is moving south and west. So if we set an example in the South, other cities, which folks here might not think much about, like Chattanooga, Nashville, Charlotte.
Many of which are seeing dramatic increases in their foreign-born population.
Yes.
As it moves, as the diversity, kind of like the diversity wave is overflowing the levee and moving way beyond Phoenix, Miami, New York, LA. Yes. We're at one of our publications, National Journal, we're in Des Moines, Iowa this week, where a majority of the K-12 public school system is now non-white in Des Moines, Iowa.
But Ron, they need exemplars is the point that I'm making. So we need folks' help so that we get it right. So when cities that aren't New York, don't have the scale of Chicago, want to figure out how to meet a challenge, they might be uncomfortable doing what Los Angeles did, but maybe they're a little more comfortable doing what Atlanta did.
Clearly, we can learn from each other, but what strikes me since I'm a mayor, I've been talking to Angel Gurria from OECD, and the statistic just popped up in my face. In 2050, you'll have over 75% of the overall population who will live in cities. That's universal. So it means that everything regarding integration, housing, how to deal with density. We have also an issue in North America of aging population. All that, I mean, that's why an organization like CityLab is so important, because we can share and we show that we're not alone in that perspective. And if we're not doing anything, who do you think they will call first?
Yeah.
There's a mayor, a friend of mine from Calgary, was saying at my level, he said, when something happened at the federal level, it takes 3 weeks to the people to notice. When it's provincial, which is states, it's 3 days. But when it's municipal, it's 3 hours.
Yeah.
So it shows the proximity and the importance to take a look.
We're almost out of time. I want to ask you both one final question. To what extent are you seeing these new immigrant communities mobilize and organize themselves politically? Are you seeing people on the school board yet? The city council? What does it take for that last step to happen?
No, the answer is no. I'm not seeing that. But what I am seeing are more and more quiet conversations where folks are conveying that they do want to be a part and do want to be involved. And they're looking to leaders to figure out that path and to structure that path. But I would be disingenuous if I would say that I'm seeing an aggressive effort. What I am seeing is a willingness and a desire to get engaged in play.
Mayor, what are your largest immigrant groups in Montreal, and to what extent are they politically?
Oh, they are politically involved, and we have several communities. I'll have the best example. My vice president can stand up, who's Arochitilian, a young Lebanese from, Armenian origin, who's in charge of smart cities, so he better deliver. So that's part of the integration. And, we have a lot of people from the Italian community, from the Asian community, the Black community in general, Arabic. Integration will mean that they are fully citizen and participate in the overall process. And that's what I'm very proud of. And this is an add value, but we need to be patient. You don't pull the flower to make it grow faster. It takes time for integration, but it takes two to tango too. So we have to work closely with them.
Do you want to add something?
I just want to say the most powerful quote I've heard on immigration is, we all used to be them. And if that is our guiding principle, that if you're in the United States of America, we all used to be them. And at one time or another, we were criticized or devalued or not fully appreciated. And look what an amazing country we have built.
Perfect words on which to end. Thank you, Mayor Reed, Mayor Coderre. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.